Okay, great. I just was discussing this with everybody else here, but I had a really interesting experience this week. First of all, George came over on Sunday, and we read the full Risho and Kokuran out loud, so that's done. And I think that was shared on the Facebook page, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there'll be more of those. I'm going to do the selection of time next. Okay? And so, also though, last week on Wednesday, the same day that we had the meeting, I had gone to try and see about getting a problem that I had facially taken a look at, and I ended up getting a MRI the first time on Wednesday. But the strange thing was, as we were turning into the hospital to have that, to go to that appointment, my wife says, you know, we really should get around to getting these health checks done. While we're here, let's go up on the top floor and schedule that, okay? So I went there, the guy's telling me, I think you should have, you know, that removed and so forth, and I was like freaking out on him a little bit. But then after we were done with that appointment, and he said, well, I'll take a look, and he scheduled an MRI for me, and I went down and had the MRI done. We went up and we had we signed up for the health check. Well, we're going to be doing some traveling again, so we needed to get them done as quickly as possible. And she actually had them set up to be done on Tuesday. So from Wednesday to Tuesday, then he comes over on Sunday. We read the Risho and Kokuran, and then on Tuesday I'm in there, and I get this health check done. And you know, I know about my heart, and you know, I'm anticipating what they're going to show me on my heart, and yeah, I got some issues there going forward. But I was not expecting anything. I said, you know, I want to have something. I feel a little something at the top of my head. So I had this whole CT scan done to my head, my skull, my brain, right? And so after you're going through that, they always tell you what's going on with, you know, this test, this, yes, you're fine here, you're not, or whatever. And so all of a sudden, we're sitting down with the guy on the brain scan, and he's going, oh, and by the way, you have a tumor in your head. You know that, right? I'm going like, what? What? And he goes, oh yeah, you got like a walnut-sized tumor. He goes, probably ought to have a look at that. I don't think it's cancerous, but you know, you should be aware that it's there. So now we went. It just so happened that the appointment for this was today, one day later. And as soon as I walk into that surgeon, who's the top plastic surgeon in the hospital, he goes, oh yeah, you've got a tumor on such and such a gland, yada, yada, yada. You got a couple of problems here. So he talked through the reality of what I'm facing as it relates to surgery and the remedy, and none of it's frightening. And frankly, again, as I told my kids yesterday when I came home with this thing that had been found, I knew I was going to have surgery. My kids are worried and cry and stuff. I'm going, they go, why aren't you upset? I'm going, I have no fear. Why should I be upset? You know, what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Whatever happens. I mean, the bottom line is life is never predictable. It gave me a chance to actually speak to them, but also they were able to see my actual demeanor faced with a crisis of not being afraid, of counting on my religious faith, my relationship with the Gohanzon.
Yeah.
And so the bottom line is that we went in again today, and sure enough, she was saying I was going to get it done quickly. I said, oh no, this is going to take a while. They'll have to, you know, I almost know how these guys' schedules work. I'm getting it out on Monday. So I'll go in on Sunday. I'm going to get back on Wednesday. And I should be able to do next Wednesday's meeting without missing a beat. Pretty cool. I'll probably have bandages on my face. I assume I might not be completely comfortable, but 1 week. Well, about a week. Yeah, about a week. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I'm going to try and make it so that we don't miss anything. I might have to cancel next week, but it won't be more than that. Okay. So going back to the heritage of the ultimate law of life and the lecture by Daisaku Ikeda, we're going to go back to page 141 tonight and start there. Before we read chapter 13, we're going to go to the study guide pages from chapter 12. I know I skipped over some gray boxes from chapter 11. That's all going to be done at the same time as we go into the summation chapter 14.
Yeah.
So after we read what we read tonight, then we're going to go back and read all the gray boxes and anything else that I missed, and then we're going to read the summary chapter, which is the end, okay? All right, so starting with page 141, the study guide. This is the following is a summary of key points from SGI President Kata's lecture from chapter 12. In the opening passage of the Heritage of the Ultimate Law of Life, Nichiren Daishonin calls upon us to muster the limitless power within ourselves to transform suffering into wisdom, confidence, joy, and hope. The ongoing effort to uncover this innate, limitless power, this self-transformation or human revolution, is the essential theme of Nichiren Buddhism. Nichiren clarifies that it is only through the great power of faith that we can share in the heritage for attaining Buddhahood. We, SGI members, have inherited the ultimate law of life and death from Nichiren, practicing and spreading his teachings throughout the world. The essence of faith for inheriting the law. Nichiren outlines the essentials of faith, stating, be resolved to summon forth the great power of faith and chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo with the prayer that your faith will be steadfast and correct at the moment of death. In his statement, be resolved implies commitment and determination, and the great power of faith is the ability to continually refresh our faith and rededicate ourselves through Daimoku to the Gohonzon. To have faith that is steadfast and correct at the moment of death indicates that in basing our lives on the mystic law and striving each day as if now is our last moment, which is pretty cool because that's what I've been trying to do lately, we can create a victorious state of being and bring our lives to a close with great fulfillment and peace and fearlessness. Inner transformation lies at the heart of inheriting the law. The spirit to value each individual and the confidence that one's life will change on a profound level are key to attaining enlightenment. Let me read that again because it's the truth. The spirit, so what's that mean? The spirit, the attitude, the focused attitude, the determination, okay, to value each individual and have confidence that one's life will change from wherever it is now. You're going to become the Buddha in your present form on a profound level are key to attaining enlightenment. You have to believe you can attain Buddhahood before you can attain Buddhahood. If you don't believe you can attain Buddhahood, you do not have faith in the teaching of Nichiren Daishonin. And in the absence of that faith, you can't anticipate that you're going to get the reward of the benefit he's promising if you have that faith. Makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So Nichiren says, never seek any other way than this to inherit the ultimate law of life and death and manifest it in your life. So you're not going to bring it forth in any other way other than that. The heritage exists in faith in the Buddhism of true cause, which enables inner transformation based on chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, based on the premise of the simultaneity of cause and effect. Nichiren continues, only then will you realize that earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. That realization is part of the process of attaining Buddhahood. In other words, illusions and sufferings become the means for developing wisdom, complete assurance, and joy. The causality of the seeds of opposites and the mystic law of changing poison into medicine, which is what just happened to me with this experience with my face and this tumor. Nichiren teaches that our sufferings can serve as a catalyst for the fundamental power inherent in our lives to emerge. However, prior to the Lotus Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha had explained that suffering was caused by desires. This led to the Hinayana Buddhist practice of trying to eradicate earthly desires to free oneself from suffering, which caused people to despise and seek to escape the sufferings of birth and death. But coming from a partial concept of causality, the view that evil is the only possible outcome of evil, efforts to completely eradicate evil are destined to be futile. Provisional Mahayana Buddhism then taught the principles earthly desires are enlightenment and the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. Mahayana. But attaining Buddhahood was thought to require austere practices carried out over many lifetimes, or people dependent on the saving grace of a godlike transcendent Buddha like Amida. These views also arise from a partial concept of causality. In this case, the view that good can be only produced by good. Therefore, neither the Hinayana teaching of achieving nirvana or being blown out, cessation of existence is what that actually is, right? It's no longer continuing in terms of karmic reality. Nirvana is gone. Therefore, neither the Hinayana teaching of achieving nirvana through eradicating desires, nor the provisional Mahayana teachings of reward through rebirth in a paradise or countless lifetimes of austere practice helped people to rid themselves of suffering, truly transform karma, or have any real hope of attaining enlightenment in one's present form. And you knew what that was the definition of nirvana, right? Mm-hmm. To be blown out. That's a cessation of existence. There's no karmic continuance on that one. On the other hand, Nichiren explains that the essence of ordinary people practicing the Lotus Sutra is found in the concept of the seeds of opposites, which is from the Gosho, what it means to hear the Buddha vehicle for the first time, which we've already read on video. It's like the 11th or 12th video in. This means the seed or cause is the opposite of the fruit or effect it produces. Namely, it means that earthly desires and the sufferings of birth and death become the cause or seed for attaining Buddhahood. Nichiren describes this as changing poison into medicine, just as a skilled physician can use even toxic substance as medicine. The mystic law can transform the three paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering into the three virtues of Dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation. The moment we chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, our desires themselves change from earthly desires that cause suffering to earthly desires that can be transformed into enlightenment. The power of the mystic law, that is the simultaneity of cause and effect, makes this possible. We are Buddhas just as we are, the most important part of the last chapter. Without earthly desires and sufferings, there is no enlightenment for ordinary people. You're not born into the 9 worlds, you can't manifest the 10th. To be just as we are means to constantly challenge ourselves in faith, to polish our lives while remaining true to ourselves. True joy emerges when, through the power of the mystic law, we realize our innate power and wisdom to win over the problems that had once overwhelmed us. Our refusal to be defeated by suffering, go Rob, can be a source of inspiration to many others. Our refusal to be defeated by suffering can be a source of inspiration to many others. This fighting spirit for Kosen Rufu brings the realization that we ourselves are originally Buddhas, and this is the source of the greatest joy. Okay, so that's the end of the summation page, the summary pages from chapter 12. Let's go on to chapter 13. The Heritage of Faith is how it's titled. It says, the heritage for attaining, thank you, dear. Pardon me. The heritage for attaining Buddhahood flows in the lives of disciples who strive selflessly for others' happiness in the same spirit as the mentor. What did that just say? You know, I always ask you to define what that says every week, so you should be ready for me to ask that question. What did that just say? The heritage. Okay, so what does the heritage for attaining Buddhahood mean? What's that say? What's that state? What do you have to have before you can have that heritage? Faith. You have to have the heritage. You have to have the heritage. Right, the lineage, of course. That's the point. The truth, the understanding of the truth. The heritage for attaining Buddhahood flows in the lives of disciples. Okay, so what does that mean? It means the heritage is already flowing in the lives of those disciples, right? That's why there is, who strive selflessly for others' happiness in the same spirit as the mentor. Who's the mentor?
Everyone.
Yes, but who's specifically the mentor? Who's the original teacher?
Nichiren.
So that's really when we're talking about the mentor. We all function as mentors by delivering his teaching, which is the correct teaching, the truth, right?
Right.
But the mentor that Daisaku Ikeda is constantly referring to, that many people twist and create malice from, saying that he's always talking about himself when he talks about the mentor. Is he a mentor? Yes. Am I a mentor? Yes. Are you mentors? Yes. We are all mentors. But the mentor of faith is the example set by Nichiren, because that's actually what we're using to bring forth the power in our life that's the same as the power he had in his life. Do you understand? That's all we're doing, is utilizing what he discovered and shared with us. And he shared it with us for what purpose? To make us equal to himself. That's what Buddhas do. Okay? Not to show you I know more shit than you, or I'm better than you, right? So, the heritage for attaining Buddhahood flows in the lives of disciples, bodhisattvas of the earth, who strive selflessly for the happiness of for others' happiness in the same spirit as the mentor, who strive selflessly for Kosen Rufu with the same mind as Nichiren, is what that just said. Okay? And then again, this is the same paragraph from last week. Be resolved to summon forth the great power of faith and chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with the power that your faith will be steadfast and correct at the moment of death. Never seek any other way to inherit the ultimate law of life and death and manifest it in your life, to bring it forth, to be the Buddha in your present form. Only then will you realize that earthly desires are enlightenment and that the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana. Even embracing the Lotus Sutra would be useless without the heritage of faith, without the correct understanding necessary for the heritage to exist. Okay? Okay, I will go into particulars again on another occasion. With my deep respect, Nichiren, the Shramana of Japan, and I won't read the rest of it, it's not necessary. The lecture starts on page 145 on the first column there. It says, this writing, Nichiren Daishonen's response to Sairenbo's question about the transmission of the ultimate law of life and death, clarifies that Myoho Renge-kyo is the supreme law that can free all people from the sufferings of birth and death. In addition to outlining on several different levels what it means to embrace and uphold this law, this letter stresses the importance of taking Nichiren, who functions as Bodhisattva superior practices in the latter day of the law, as one's teacher, and practicing with the same spirit as he did in order to overcome the sufferings of birth and death. The final passage concludes by stating that the heritage of faith is the only true means by which all people can inherit the law of Myoho Renge-kyo, the ultimate law of life and death. So do you understand what that just said? The way that you inherit this heritage is to have the same faith as the Daishonin, okay, which you absolutely can. All you're going to do is follow his teachings and believe in them. Carry them forward. You will see so much actual proof, there won't be a doubt in your mind. You will attain Buddhahood in your present form, period. Okay? But you've got to do it on the basis of how it's been formulated as being able to be accomplished. All right? And in the absence of those things, it can't be. That's what was made very clear in that paragraph. This is the bottom line. This conclusion addresses the very heart of Buddhism. How do you attain Buddhahood? The question of life and death is a fundamental source of human suffering, and the transmission of the ultimate law of life and death is a means for resolving that suffering. No matter how wonderful a teaching may seem, unless it explains to individuals the key to surmounting the sufferings of birth and death, which all people, regardless of their faith, will experience. All right? It's the universal reality of being a human being. Birth, old age, sickness, and death. It's everybody. No matter how wonderful a teaching may seem, unless it explains to individuals the key to surmounting. So what's that mean? The key to surmounting. Is it the key to understanding? Is it the key to coping with? Is it the key to no, what is it? Overcoming. Surmounting. No matter how wonderful a teaching may seem, unless it explains to individuals the key to surmounting the sufferings of birth and death. And how would we surmount the sufferings of birth and death?
By being a Buddha
In my present form. That is the surmounting the sufferings of birth and death. That's what that is, right? So, it explains to individuals the key to surmounting the sufferings of birth and death by teaching them how to attain Buddhahood in their present form. Unless it does that, it has no real substance. It's gobbledygook. It's fairy tale. It's mind candy. Does no good after you're dead. All right? At the top of page 145. The heritage of faith in all its aspects. The best and surest way to convey the supreme law to others is through faith. The law cannot be transmitted by such transitory and illusionary phenomena as priestly authority or religious rituals and ceremonies. Faith is the foremost importance. Faith is of the foremost importance in transmitting the true supreme law. So your faith is even more important than your relationship with the organization. Your faith is the basis of everything. Okay? That's where Buddhahood comes from, is faith. Only faith can break through the darkness of ignorance shrouding our lives and enable us to tap the infinite power of the mystic law we inherently possess, because it's inside us, this power, and the only way to tap it is to believe that it's there. If you don't believe that it's there, you can't tap it. Faith is the only way to get this done. It says, to share in the heritage of the law means to bring forth within us this boundless power of the law. So what's that mean? To share in the heritage of this law, we must have faith in this law. Right? That's what that just said. That is why in this writing, Nichiren has gone to great lengths to offer a full, multi-dimensional explanation of the heritage of faith, which we have discussed in detail over the course of this series, which we've been reading since February. In this final installment, let us reconfirm the main points. First, correct faith is grounded in the realization that Shakyamuni Buddha, who attained enlightenment countless kalpas ago, the Lotus Sutra that leads all people to Buddhahood, and we ordinary human beings are in no way different or separate from one another. Everybody clear on that now? Right? This is a crucial point concerning the substance of faith in the mystic law. In this writing, Nichiren states that chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo with this belief that there is no difference between you, Shakyamuni, the Lotus Sutra, or Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is a matter of the utmost importance. The utmost importance would mean it's almost the most important thing, okay, for his disciples. The core message of this statement is to believe that our present self is an entity of Myoho Renge-kyo, just as Nichiren teaches over and over and over again. So it's actually to have faith in Nichiren's teaching that Myoho Renge-kyo is the entity of our life, and that we can attain Buddhahood in our present form in this lifetime, as he has taught. All right? As President Toda picked up on, as President Makaguchi picked up on, as President Ikeda is teaching us now. Okay, that's point one. Second is the aspect of striving fully in faith. That means not holding anything back, not doing it casually, so that we have no regrets, based on the spirit that now is the last moment of one's life, not taking for granted we have time to catch up with all this later when it's more convenient. Okay? And then also, achieving a correct and steadfast mind at the moment of death. Wholeheartedly practicing faith each day, day after day, month after month, and continuing to do so throughout our lives. This is what assures us of attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. That's how we accomplish having both of those aspects ingrained in our daily life. Not our belief set, not what we believe in, but what we've actually accomplished through action. All right? Here, Nichiren explains the heritage of faith in terms of one's own depth of faith, which you're the only one responsible for. Nobody can get you there. The depth of faith you have is completely 100% determined by you, and the fortune you created for yourself to have the mentors or the access to the truth, the heritage, that you then grasp as the truth and the heritage, and then you embellish in your life through the causes of practice to create this reality of being in the 10th world in your present form. Everybody's with me? Okay. And here Nichiren explains the heritage of faith in terms of one's own depth of faith and the continuing of one's Buddhist practice to the last moment of your life. Moreover, when we attain Buddhahood in this existence, The life and death cycle we continually undergo throughout the past, present, and future becomes life and death as functions of Myoho Renge Kyo. We have now validated our oneness with the law, right? And follows the rhythm of birth and death in the realm of Buddhahood. Everybody's with me? This present lifetime in which we have been born as human beings is an irreplaceable existence because we know we have access to this right now. Okay? We have no other guarantees about what's going to happen after we die. If we accomplish this in this lifetime, we already know how things are going to be set from this point forward. He says, it will determine the direction of our lives. He says, this present lifetime in which we have been born as human beings is an irreplaceable existence. It will determine, because what you do or don't do is going to go on from here, right? It will determine the direction of our lives throughout the eternal cycle of birth and death. Are you going to create the slander of being Titanic? I mean, these are all decisions you make in your life right now. Are you going to see it through to the very end and take Buddhahood in your present form? This is up to you. These are decisions you're going to make in your own life. It's not going to be about anything about the Gohonzon's limitation. Third is the importance of unity in faith, a commitment to the widespread propagation of the law in the spirit of many in body but one in mind. The heritage of Myoho Renge Kyo is not just there for us alone. All people, and that's a lot of people, all people. All people are entities of Myoho Renge Kyo, and as such can partake. They have the same potentiality as you do, can partake in the heritage for attaining Buddhahood. Actions to help others gain access to this heritage is the way of Kosen Rufu, the great wish or vow of the Buddha. And Kosen Rufu is made a reality by the harmonious community of practitioners united in faith toward that shared objective. Notice he didn't just singularly qualify that as the Soka Gakkai only. Here Nichiren clarifies the heritage of faith in terms of Kosen Rufu and the harmonious community of practitioners. But the key is that there is no need to slander other people that chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. You can have disagreements, you can have conversations and dialogue, you can have even frontal kinds of debate, but there's no reason to slander their life as a human being or as a fellow Buddha. Okay? So that's the key. As I have, because again, I read that whole thing. Did he mention the Soka Gakkai specifically, explicitly there, or as if it's exclusionary? No. It's about whether or not you're with the right, correct thinking. Okay? And I think the Soka Gakkai has that. Okay? That's why you don't want to be slandering the Soka Gakkai. Anybody. As I have summarized above, Nichiren explains the heritage of faith on different levels, addressing 1, the substance of faith, 2, the depth of faith in continuing in Buddhist practice, and 3, Kosen Rufu and the harmonious community of practitioners. He thus gives us a full picture of the kind of faith needed to share in the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death in order to attain Buddhahood in our present form. Okay? Sharing the same commitment as the teacher is the key. The teacher is the teacher. Nichiren Daishonin references Bodhisattva superior practices, the teacher who embodies all of these aspects of the heritage of faith. The multifaceted meaning of the heritage of faith has been explained in words, but if many people are to actually share in this heritage in their own lives, it is necessary to have a teacher who embodies it in its entirety. That's somebody that's attained Buddhahood in their present form. Whereas words merely explain each aspect of the heritage of faith separately, a teacher whose character and behavior embody the law of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo can convey and awaken people to this heritage in one stroke. Okay? And that's basically the reality that we're all here to teach the law. If we attain Buddhahood in our present form, we're actually actualizing the reality of what? That we're teachers of the law. That's why we've made our advent. Okay? Everybody understands? No difference between us and Nichiren then, right? Accordingly, in this writing, Nichiren urges us to chant and practice Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the law transmitted by Bodhisattva superior practice, and he implies that his own efforts in propagating this teaching correspond to the appearance of superior practices as predicted in the Lotus Sutra. After these remarks concerning the teacher, Nichiren concludes by emphasizing the importance of the heritage of faith. In other words, striving in faith with the same commitment as the teacher is the key and the ultimate path to sharing in the heritage of faith. So the heritage of faith is this empowerment that one receives from revealing the 10th world in one's life, right? But the key to that is to have faith in the teaching of the teacher. Do you understand? All right, because you're going to be limited as to how much you can understand without taking somebody else's understanding and then testing and utilizing that through the proof of actual fact to validate it and use it yourself. It's much faster than having to go through the process of learning it on a trial and error basis on yourself, going from A to Z with no help or assistance. He says, President Ikeda continues, we can regard this entire writing as a detailed exposition. We can regard this entire writing as a detailed exposition on the heritage of faith. The view, going at the bottom of page 147 at the second column, the view of life and death in Nichiren Buddhism, a wellspring of hope for humankind. Since my youth, I have been confident that a change in the way of looking at life and death, based on the teachings of Nichiren Buddhism, would give untold hope to humankind. What did he just say? I have since my youth had confidence that Kosen Rufu would change the way the world gets along. I have also felt that this would form an indispensable foundation for actualizing world peace, Kosen Rufu. And I have discussed this in various ways whenever the opportunity has arisen. Top of page 149. In Choose Life, my dialogue with British historian Arnold J. Toynbee, it's a book that Daisaku Ikeda wrote, the first of my many dialogues with scholars and leaders around the globe, we squarely took up and discussed this theme of life and death. Pardon me. Does life persist after death, or does it only belong only to this world? If it does continue beyond death, is it eternal or finite, and in what state does it persist? Dr. Toynbee earnestly listened to my candid questions, and he offered the restrained comments of a scholar responding, the possible eternal nature of life is an important question that arouses points insusceptible of actual proof. But he also went on to say, I believe that these questions can be answered in terms of Ku, the Buddhist concept of non-substantiality or of eternity, but not in terms of space-time. He inferred that the question of life and death is a fundamental issue not so much of scholarship, but of religion. And he turned the question back on me, suggesting that it would fall to me as a Buddhist to provide an answer. The insightful conclusions of this leading intellectual is that the answer lies in the domain of religion. The problem of life and death poses an eternal riddle for humankind and at the same time is a central focus of religion. All of them. Right?
Mm.
It is no exaggeration to say that this is precisely where religion's raison d'être,
Oui, raison d'être.
almost. Raison, say it again loudly.
Raison d'être.
Okay, raison d'être is found in his work, The System of Value-Creating Education. First Soka Gakkai president, Tanesaburo Makaguchi, makes the following observations. With reference to our life activities as they relate to the universe as a whole, when we directly confront the problem of life and death. This is Tanesaburo Makaguchi. Listen to this guy. When we directly confront the problem of life and death, even if we are a person of great wisdom or scholarship, or a person of great heroism or enterprise, we realize how minuscule our own power is in comparison to that of the universe or the natural phenomena of life. At that time, we have to face up to the power of the universe itself, which is truly awesome in its immensity. Our activities on a religious or spiritual sphere arise from this recognition. Our life activities as they relate to society too can in fact be regarded as part of such activities. He is saying that if we wish to resolve the problem of life and death, we must acknowledge the immense power of the universe and open up our lives to the spiritual or religious impulse within, which is what all religion is created around, is an internal spiritual impulse of humankind, right? His point that, it's why? It's that question. This point that our activities in society are part of, his point that our activities in society are part of our spiritual or religious activities also bears close consideration. As practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, because there's no separation of anything in Nichiren Buddhism, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, this is the point. As practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, the powerful life force we develop through our activities in the spiritual realm, encouraging others, serve as the engine that enable us to lead positive and valuable lives in society. Because not only do we have an effect on others, but we create fortune in our own lives. We see benefit, we're motivated to continue in the same fashion. Right? That occurs beyond any recognition of cognitive understanding of your life as the Buddha or having any innate power therein.
But you have religion and science.
No, that's what President Ikeda is. You're saying that they're two separate things.
Mm-hmm. And you say?
And I'm saying in Buddhism there's no such thing as separation of anything.
Anything.
Of anything. Mm-hmm. There's delusion and correct understanding. Okay? So, if you've made up a bunch of bullshit to make up for not having science, it's still bullshit. Okay? That's not to confuse the two. There is with the correct religion, there should be no separation, no disparaging differentiation between it and a religious thought. A correct religious thought will have within it the predication for scientific fact to remain true and valid.
So what is religion?
What is religion? Religion is belief, is a belief set. Any belief set in those things that are not of science.
So.
But again, what I'm trying to explain is that
like,
that's a diluted perspective of reality. Okay. There is no separation. That's a Western person talking to a Western person. You're talking to me bullshit, Western Christian bullshit that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So unwrap your head around those things that might hold you back and listen to what's being said from an Asian perspective of eternity rather than finite creation. Because that's where yours is coming from. That's where that whole process that you just discussed of religion comes from. Creation is a creationist kind of thing. All religion, where do we come from? What happens when we die? Okay? As practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, the powerful life force we develop through our activities in the spiritual realm serves as the engine that enables us to lead positive and valuable lives in society as living examples of the fact that there's no separation between anything, as living examples of the power, of the truth of the power that exists in all people, not just us as special chosen ones. Okay? We're not saved. No. We save ourselves. There isn't a goddamn thing anybody does for us other than introduce us to something that we already made the causes to be introduced to. Do you understand causality? Your karma is 100% created by you. What does anybody do that you didn't actually create the circumstance for the manifestation of? What drops on you from nowhere? I'm just asking, do you think there's anything that does? That just happens because...
Energy.
No, energy's.
Universe is
Yeah, energy's created by the helium and hydrogen blowing off. Yeah, that's a process.
but it's
That's
what
all
we
alive.
are.
That's the life of the universe. Is
universe
those
is-
chemical processes.
Yeah.
All other elements are created from that process.
We are a ray of light.
I don't know about that bullshit about a ray of light, but
But
you
we
know,
come
the
from
point is
energy
we're
and
all
light.
stardust here. The key is that every molecule of our body is created from stardust. All of the elements of our human body come from stardust. Gold, platinum, everything you think of comes from stars. As practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, that's all scientific shit I could definitely prove to you in a nanosecond if you let me get a dictionary out. As practitioners of Nichiren Buddhism, the powerful life force, I'm not mistaken about that.
No.
The powerful life force we develop through our activities in the spiritual realm serves as the engine that enables us to lead positive and valuable lives in society. Here, the heritage of faith is the key to a spiritual life in which we are in tune with the vast power of the universe that encompasses both life and death. We are in tune with the truth of reality, not the prognostication of what reality is. That's a spiritual thing that only faith can actualize. Okay? A Butsubo seeking spirit toward Nichiren. Here, based on guidance Nichiren gave to his followers, I will highlight the decisive importance of the heritage of faith in overcoming the sufferings of birth and death, especially the aspect of striving with the same commitment as the mentor. A Butsubo can be considered. Do you know who a Butsubo is? No? You don't know who Butsubo is. Okay. Next time I'll read the gray box, I'll introduce you to a Butsubo. He's a very important person to know about. A Butsubo can be considered a leading representative of the followers who, one who shared in the heritage of faith during Nichiren's day and thereby overcame the sufferings of birth and death and attained Buddhahood in his lifetime. Okay? In a letter to the nun, to the lay nun Shinichi about her deceased husband, a Butsubo, Nichiren writes, "Some may wonder where the spirit of the late Butsubo may be at this moment. But by using the clear mirror of the Lotus Sutra to reflect his image, I, Nichiren, can see him among the assembly on Eagle Peak, seated within the treasure tower of many treasures Buddha and facing toward the east." Here, Nichiren describes a Butsubo as facing toward the east, meaning he is seated directly opposite the Buddha's Shakyamuni and many treasures. And if you think this is literal, it isn't.
No.
Okay. All right. Don't want to mess you up. Yeah, he's talking to somebody in 13th century Japan trying to explain to him where their husband might be based on all the teachings that... Okay. Here Nichiren describes a Butsubo as facing toward the east, meaning he is seated directly opposite the Buddha's Shakyamuni and many treasures, who are seated side by side within the treasure tower at the Pure Land of Eagle Peak. If you want to read point 14, it'll explain to you that that's... Okay. This is certainly the correct way to view a Butsubo who had risked his own life to support and aid Nichiren. Now again, this little gray box is going to tell you about how Butsubo had originally opposed him. He was a big Nembutsu follower, but he was there when Nichiren beat everybody in the debate and decided to become his disciple, threw down his beads, and never did the Nembutsu again, yada, yada, yada. Supported Nichiren through his whole time in exile on Asado, and then even after Nichiren had been pardoned and went back to Minobu, this old fart, I mean, he's older than me, for God's sake, took off from this island of Sado, went across the Sea of Japan, and all the way up Mount Minobu on personal religious pilgrimages to see Nichiren and say, "What up, master?"
Wow.
Okay, 3 times.
Wow.
And then after he passed away, his wife stayed in touch and continued to send offerings to the Daishonin in support on Minobu. So these people had totally dedicated their lives.
Right.
And that's why President Ikeda is talking. When we talk about the same mind as the mentor, a Butsubo is the example. Him and, Shijo Kingo, all those dudes. All right? So this is certainly the correct way to view a Butsubo who had risked his own life to support and aid Nichiren. For instance, during the harsh winter on Sado Island, without a thought for his own safety, a Butsubo repeatedly visited Nichiren under the cover of darkness at the Semibo, his dwelling in Tsukahara, to bring him food. And if he'd ever been caught doing that, it would have been his ass. And even after Nichiren's exile and subsequent move to Mount Minobu of Butsubo, despite his advanced age, made the long and arduous journey from Sado to visit him at least 3 times over the course of several years. The deceased of Butsubo, we are told, now resides in the Pure Land of Eagle Peak. That's in that letter, right? And is facing the Buddhas inside the treasure tower with the same earnest spirit with which he sought to out Nichiren during his life. We can take this to mean that disciples are certain to attain Buddhahood if they strive in faith with a seeking spirit toward the teacher who expounds and practices the mystic law. Nichiren's that, President Kate is that, I'm that, you're that. Guidance to Nanjo Hyoe Shichiro. Next, I'll cite a passage. This is Nanjo. Is this Nanjo Tokumitsu's dad? Yeah, it's Nanjo Tokumitsu's dad. Okay, this is a guy that started practicing, got sick, chanted Daimoku, and died. Okay, he didn't miraculously recover. Okay, let's read further what it says. Next, I'll cite a passage from encouragement to a sick person, a well-known Gosho that we've also all read. A letter Nichiren Daishonin wrote in 1264. In fact, this is the one I sent to Rene that he said thank you for before he died. The father of Nanjo Tokumitsu, both of whom embraced faith in the mystic law. Shichiro had fallen ill and died the following year. This writing can be viewed as Nichiren's heartfelt guidance to a disciple who was approaching death. Okay, because sometimes that's going to be the case. You are finally at the end of life. Clarifying the essential path for attaining Buddhahood in his present form under those circumstances. Nichiren writes, should you depart from this life before I do, you must report to Brahma, Shakra, the 4 heavenly kings, and King Yama. Declare yourself to be a disciple of the priest Nichiren, the foremost votary of the Lotus Sutra in Japan. Then they cannot possibly treat you discourteously. But if you should be of 2 minds, alternately chanting the Nimbutsu and reciting the Lotus Sutra, and fear what others may say about you, then even though you identify yourself as Nichiren's disciple, they will never accept your word. Do not resent me later. So he's warning, if you want to try to attain Buddhahood in your present form, to Shichiro, he's saying, I know you're my disciple, but I also know as a human being, for as many years as you were Nimbutsu, there might be this thought in the back of your mind, I'm facing serious death. Maybe I should just do some Amida prayers here, okay, just to cover my ass. Yeah. And Nichiren is saying, you're not going to get there that way, and if you do that, don't blame me if you don't get there.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Right.
You will not attain Buddhahood in your present form by straddling the fence, is what Nichiren is saying. Now, he lays out this sort of like little bit of a consequence threat, but it's not literal as it relates to what's going to occur at a location where they're going to say, I'm going to punish you because you didn't do what Nichiren said. It's causal, karmic reality that manifests only in life as a human being.
Right.
Okay? There's no bullshit. This is all the correct understanding. But if you should be of 2 minds, alternately chanting the Nimbutsu, that's what he's qualifying. If you're doing an Nimbutsu and this, it's not going to work. That's what he's saying. And reciting the Lotus Sutra, both, and fear what others may say about you, because they're all Nimbutsu and you're my disciple. They're going to all say, what the hell does Nichiren know? He says that even though you identify yourself as Nichiren's disciple, they will never accept your word, because they'll know the truth. They all know who I am, is what he's saying. When you go to Mount, when you go to Eagle Peak, they already all know who I am. All right? Like this, do not resent me later. In this letter, Nichiren teaches Shichiro the spirit and practice of the votary of the Lotus Sutra based on the 5 guides of propagation, which I'll read next week. Nichiren indicates elsewhere that the 5 guides represent the attitude of mind that should characterize the votary of the Lotus Sutra when he strives to propagate its teachings. Again, from what it means to slander the law. It's on video. There are 5 important points to which practitioners must pay attention when spreading the mystic law. Here Nichiren, the teacher of Kosen Rufu, is in fact describing his own spirit and actions as a votary of the Lotus Sutra. Right? That's all he's telling Shichiro to have under his belt. Be like me. This is my mindset. Through this letter, he is trying to explain to Shichiro, who has fallen ill and is facing death, the importance of striving in faith with the same spirit that Nichiren has. Okay? This illustrates how practicing faith with the same commitment as the teacher, we're not talking about Daisaku Ikeda, are we? Daisaku Ikeda wrote this, right? He's talking about Nichiren as the teacher. This illustrates how practicing faith with the same commitment as the teacher, who is the votary of the Lotus Sutra, can assist us enormously in overcoming the sufferings of birth and death and in attaining Buddhahood in this lifetime. But there can be other people that are also votaries of the Lotus Sutra, but they're also all disciples of Nichiren. None of those votaries of the Lotus Sutra are not disciples of Nichiren. Nichiren offers Shichiro advice to this effect. If you should die, proudly tell the heavenly deities that you were a disciple of the votary of the Lotus Sutra. They are sure to protect you. But if you allow yourself to be swayed by the sufferings of sickness and death, and traces of your past belief in Nimbutsu should resurface, leaving you conflicted about faith, I can't be held responsible for the outcome. Nichiren poured his whole heart into these words, genuinely wishing for his disciple, not holding back the truth. Because if you do that, you're going to screw yourself. He's telling him. Nichiren poured his whole heart into these words, genuinely wishing for his disciple to attain Buddhahood. This encouragement enabled Shichiro to break through his doubts and summon strong faith in the Lotus Sutra. Nichiren later learned how the following year Shichiro had died while maintaining a correct and steadfast mind at the moment of death. He actually chanted Daimoku. His last words were Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The pride of leading a life of unsurpassed value. Yeah, it is prideful. 153. The path of mentor and disciple in the Soka Gakkai has also been characterized by a shared commitment and dedicated efforts to widely propagate Nichiren Buddhism in society. That can't just be talking about Daisaku Ikeda. That's talking about all of us that have been doing this. And I am confident that the salient struggles of our members since the pioneering days of our movement are actions that carry on the humanistic legacy of the Lotus Sutra. On the evening of August 14th, 1947, some 60 years ago, I first met President Toda at a discussion meeting in the Tojiya area of Kamata in Tokyo. The man who was to become my mentor was 47 at the time, and I was 19. When I entered the room on that fateful day, President Toda was giving a lecture on Nichiren Daishonin's treatise on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, which is the one that I just read for everybody on Sunday. So it's there for you if you want to listen. He says, he declared, I want to rid the world of all suffering and misery. Won't you join me? That was the first time I heard him speak. I believe his words were also a cry heralding the dawn of a great new people's movement. On that day, I asked him what was the true way of life for a human being. President Toda's response was genuinely free of any intellectual game playing or deceit. Each of his answers shone with genuine humanity. He was truly a person grounded in the Lotus Sutra and had risen above the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death. That day marked the start of my journey of shared commitment with my mentor. Mr. Toda taught me about the true nature of life and death. And as time went by, I felt that it was my duty as a disciple to clarify and show actual proof of overcoming the sufferings of birth and death. And that's why, since I wasn't supposed to live past my 30s, I'm 90-something now. Okay? When disciples strive in a spirit of oneness with the mentor, sharing the same commitment to Kosen Rufu, they can summon infinite strength. The mentor, based on a profound understanding of the fundamental question of life and death, ponders deeply and takes action to help all people manifest their innate potential and lead happy and successful lives. I learned the way of faith in Nichiren Buddhism, the key to absolute victory, from Mr. Toda. Mr. Toda learned it from Mr. Makaguchi, and Mr. Makaguchi learned it from Nichiren and from chanting to the Gohonzon. This because it's not part of Nichiren Shoshu's heritage, what we practice, frankly. Mr. Toda, it's the same curriculum, but it's a different prescription. And Mr. Makaguchi learned it from Nichiren and from chanting to the Gohonzon. From Nichiren, he's talking about reading the Gosho, right? He's not saying he appeared to him in some vision. This is the heritage of mentor and disciple in the Soka Gakkai. When disciples unite in spirit with the mentor, they can overcome the sufferings of birth and death, and in this lifetime, attain a state in which they savor the boundless joy of the law that continues eternally throughout past, present, and future. They attain Buddhahood in their present form. That is the purpose of Buddhism. Accordingly, the key to inheriting the ultimate law of life and death lies in faith. Of life and death lies in faith that embodies the spirit of not begrudging one's life in striving for Kosen Rufu and the happiness of others, united with the spirit of the mentor, which has been qualified in this chapter as definitely being Nichiren Daishonin. I once dedicated the following poem to some members who had joined me in pledging away to, I had once dedicated the following poem to some fellow members who had joined me in pledging to wage a selfless struggle. The oneness, here's the poem, the oneness of mentor and disciple, the fundamental principle of Soka and Nichiren Buddhism, the heritage of faith that exists within you. The brilliant, that's the end of the poem. The brilliant second act of worldwide Kosen Rufu has now opened. An age when the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death flows throughout the world has now arrived, because there are people practicing and chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo everywhere now. We have only just begun, my brothers, throughout the world. There are, and sisters, there is no nobler or more valuable way of life than to enable people across the globe to share in this supreme heritage and to savor a state of being in which they can feel joy in both life and death. The world is waiting for the advance of Soka humanism, which has the power to elevate people's lives to a state pervaded by eternity, happiness, true self, and purity. The world is closely watching the victorious achievements of mentor and disciple in the SGI. That's it for this week. Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.